If you enjoy this story, please remember to like and subscribe. Your support means everything to me. I was 42 when I saw my husband James frantically deleting photos from his phone at 2 a.m., his face illuminated by the blue light as he methodically erased what looked like dozens of images. Something made me pause in the hallway instead of walking into our bedroom. My husband of 15 years, the father of our 3 children, the man who had built a life with me after we emigrated from Nigeria to America, was hunched over his device like it contained state secrets. I watched his thumb swipe frantically, his breathing shallow, until he reached one photo that made him freeze. He stared at it for what felt like forever, then after a deep sigh, pressed his finger to the screen. But instead of deleting it, he saved it to a hidden folder. That single gesture shattered the trust I had spent 15 years building. What was in that photo that he couldn't delete but needed to hide? What secret was worth protecting while he erased all other evidence around it? I stepped back into the shadows, my heart pounding in my chest. After 23 years together, 15 of them married with 3 children, I thought I knew everything about James. I was wrong. I met James when I was 19 and he was 21, both of us students at the University of Lagos. I was studying economics, dreaming of working for a bank someday. He was in engineering, brilliant and focused, with plans to change the world through sustainable technology. We fell in love over late-night study sessions and weekend trips to the beach. When he got the opportunity to continue his studies in America, he asked me to come with him. We were young and in love, and America seemed like a land of endless possibilities. We struggled at first, 2 Nigerian immigrants trying to find our footing in Boston. I worked 3 jobs while finishing my degree. James studied during the day and drove a taxi at night. But we had each other, and that was enough. We saved every penny, and after 5 years we had enough for a modest wedding. Another 5 years of hard work allowed us to put a down payment on our house in a nice suburb. By then, we had our first child, Adana, followed 2 years later by the twins, Chidi and Chisholm. Over the years, we built a good life. James advanced in his engineering firm, eventually becoming a senior project manager. I worked my way up at First National Bank, managing the international wire transfer department. We had a beautiful home, 3 healthy children, and a strong connection to both our American community and the Nigerian diaspora in Boston. Every summer, we saved enough to take the children to Lagos to visit their grandparents and cousins. We were living the American dream while staying rooted in our heritage. Our marriage wasn't perfect. No marriage is. But we had weathered storms together. When my father died, James held me for nights as I cried myself to sleep. When he was passed over for a promotion he deserved, I reassured him of his worth and helped him find a better position. We argued about money, parenting, and his mother's occasional interference, but we always found our way back to each other. At 42, I felt settled in my life. Our oldest, Adana, was 14 and beginning to think about college. The twins were 12 and keeping us busy with soccer and science fairs. James and I had our routines: Friday date nights, Sunday family dinners, monthly gatherings with our Nigerian friends. I was proud of the life we had built together, the stability we had created for our children, the legacy we were building as Nigerian Americans. Then came the night I saw him deleting those photos, and everything changed. Looking back, I should have noticed the small changes. James had become more protective of his phone over the past few months. He had always left it lying around carelessly, on the kitchen counter while cooking, on the coffee table while watching TV, sometimes even forgetting it in the bathroom. But recently, it was always in his pocket or face down beside him. There were other signs, too. He had started working late more often, claiming big projects and demanding clients. When he came home, he was distracted, checking his phone constantly. He had bought new clothes, nothing flashy, just more stylish than his usual practical wardrobe. He had even started using a cologne I didn't recognize. But I trusted James. In Nigerian culture, respect for your husband runs deep, and I had been raised to give him the benefit of the doubt. Besides, he had never given me reason to doubt him before. So I pushed my concerns aside, blaming my suspicions on too many American TV dramas and not enough sleep. But that night, watching him hunched over his phone, methodically erasing what looked like evidence, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next morning, I searched his face across the breakfast table, looking for clues, for guilt, for anything that might tell me what he was hiding. "You're quiet this morning," he said, buttering his toast with the precision he applied to everything in his life. "Just tired," and I replied, wondering if the man I had loved for more than half my life was a stranger to me now. "Didn't sleep well." "You should see a doctor about that," he said, the concern in his voice sounding genuine. "You haven't been sleeping well for weeks now." Was that guilt making him extra attentive? Or was he truly worried about me? I couldn't tell anymore, and that uncertainty was like a physical pain in my chest. "I'll be late tonight," he added, standing up and kissing the top of my head. "Don't wait up." As he headed out the door, I called after him, "James? Is everything okay with us?" He paused, turned, and looked at me with those deep brown eyes I had fallen in love with decades ago. "Of course, Amara, why wouldn't it be?" His smile seemed genuine, but I noticed he didn't quite meet my eyes. That night, I couldn't focus on anything. The children noticed. Adana asked if I was sick, and even the twins were unusually quiet at dinner, sensing something was wrong. I went through the motions of our evening routine. Homework checks, showers, bedtime stories for the twins, though at 12, they pretended not to need them anymore. Then Adana's latest drama with her friends. But my mind kept returning to James and that photo, the one he couldn't delete but needed to hide. I needed to see it. I needed to know. Once the children were asleep, I paced our bedroom, debating with myself. I had never looked through James's phone before. In 15 years of marriage, we had respected each other's privacy, but this was different. This was about protecting our family, our marriage, our life together. I had a right to know if that was all in jeopardy. By midnight, I had convinced myself. I texted James to check when he'd be home. "Working late," came the reply. "Don't wait up." The same message as this morning, word for word. It felt rehearsed, which only strengthened my resolve. I knew his passcode. It was our wedding anniversary, 074. He had never changed it, never thought he needed to. I found his tablet in his home office drawer. It was synced to his phone, something he had set up so he could easily transfer work files between devices. My hands trembled as I typed in the passcode. The screen unlocked immediately, revealing his familiar background, a picture of our family at Revere Beach last summer, all of us laughing as the waves crashed around our knees. I felt a pang of guilt, quickly followed by righteous anger. I was protecting that family in the photo. I opened his photo gallery, scrolling through recent pictures, mostly work-related, screenshots of emails and project plans. Nothing incriminating, but then I remembered he had moved the photo to a hidden folder. I searched through his apps and found one called Secure Folder that I hadn't seen before. It required another passcode. I tried our anniversary, denied. The children's birthdays, denied. His birthday, my birthday, denied. Then I tried 325, March 25th, the day we met. The app opened, revealing a folder simply labeled A. My heart pounded as I tapped on it. Inside were dozens of photos, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. But they weren't what I expected. They weren't photos of another woman or evidence of an affair. They were photos of houses. Beautiful houses with sprawling gardens, ocean views, and sun-drenched rooms. Houses nothing like our modest suburban home. And as I scrolled through them, I found documents, bank statements showing an account I knew nothing about, with a balance of $343,000. Emails between James and a realtor about a viewing schedule. A folder of mortgage pre-approval forms with both our names on them. And then I found the photo, the one he couldn't delete. It was a deed of sale for a beachfront property in Lagos, dated 3 years ago, purchased in both our names, but I had never seen it, never signed anything, never knew it existed. The price, $245,000 of our money spent on a house I knew nothing about. A house in Lagos, in my home country, that apparently belonged to me, but that I had never seen. A property purchased in both our names, but somehow without my knowledge. This wasn't an affair. This was something I had never imagined. Financial infidelity on a scale I couldn't comprehend. How had he hidden this much money? Where had it come from? Why would he buy property in Lagos without telling me? And most disturbing of all, and why was my signature on documents I had never seen? I couldn't confront James immediately. I needed more information, more evidence, a better understanding of what I was dealing with. I took screenshots of everything in the secure folder, sending them to my own private email account. Then I carefully returned the tablet exactly as I had found it. The next day, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. After dropping the children at school, I sat at our dining room table with my laptop, a notepad, and a determination to uncover the truth. First, I checked our joint accounts, savings, checking, investments. Everything seemed normal, with the expected balances and transaction histories. The mortgage payments for our Boston home were regular and on time. Our retirement accounts showed steady growth. On the surface, our finances looked exactly as they should. But that hidden account with $343,000 and the Lagos property worth $245,000 meant there was money, a lot of money, that I couldn't account for. James made a good salary as a senior project manager, but not enough to save that kind of money without me noticing. We made financial decisions together, or so I had thought. I looked through our tax returns for the past 5 years. James always prepared them, claiming his engineering background made him better with numbers, though we both knew that was nonsense given my career in banking. I had trusted him, signing where he indicated without scrutinizing every line. Now I examined them with fresh eyes and a sinking feeling. There was nothing obviously wrong with the tax returns, no mystery income declared, no suspicious deductions. But if he had hidden money, it wouldn't appear here anyway. I needed to dig deeper. I searched our home office, looking for any paperwork related to property in Lagos or additional bank accounts. I found nothing. James was too careful for that. Whatever paper trail existed was likely digital, protected by passwords, or kept at his office. But I did find a business card tucked into his passport. A Nigerian lawyer, named Oluwaseun Adeyemi, with an office in Lagos. I had never heard James mention this name. I wrote it down, adding it to my growing list of mysteries. Next, I called our bank, using my employee credentials to access our banking history going back 5 years instead of the standard 18 months. I discovered something strange. Regular transfers to a company called Integrity Investments, always for exactly $3,000 on the 15th of every month, going back 4 years. The transfers stopped 6 months ago. I had never heard of Integrity Investments. It wasn't part of our retirement planning or investment strategy. A quick internet search revealed it was a Nigerian investment firm specializing in real estate, development in Lagos. Their website showcased luxury beachfront properties, exactly like the one in the photos I had found. 4 years of $3,000. Monthly payments would be $144,000. That still didn't account for the full $245,000 purchase price of the Lagos property, but it was a significant portion. Where had the rest come from? And what about the additional $343,000 in that hidden account? I needed to talk to someone who could help me make sense of this, but I was ashamed. In Nigerian culture, marriage problems aren't discussed openly. Seeking outside help would be admitting failure, but this was too big to handle alone. I called my cousin Ngozi, who had emigrated to Boston a year after us. She was a lawyer specializing in international business transactions, and more importantly, she was family I could trust. I asked if we could meet for lunch, making it clear I needed advice on a sensitive matter. We met at a small Ethiopian restaurant where we were unlikely to run into anyone from our Nigerian community. Ngozi listened without interrupting as I showed her the screenshots and explained everything I had discovered. "This is serious, Amara," she said when I finished. "The property purchase isn't just about the money. It's about your signature on documents you never signed. That's forgery, potentially fraud." "But why?" I asked, still struggling to understand. "Why would James do this? Why buy property in Lagos without telling me? We've talked about retiring in Nigeria someday, but that was a distant dream, not an active plan." Ngozi hesitated before responding. "Have you considered that James might be preparing to leave? Building a life back in Nigeria without you knowing?" The suggestion felt like a physical blow. Leave? After 23 years together? With our children? No, that can't be it. "Then there's another explanation," Ngozi said gently. "But whatever it is, it involves deception, Amara. Significant deception over many years. You need to be prepared for that." She advised me to gather more evidence before confronting James. She offered to contact colleagues in Lagos who could verify the property's existence and ownership. And she recommended I speak with a forensic accountant to trace the money trail more thoroughly. "What about the children?" I asked, my voice breaking for the first time. "How do I protect them through this?" "One step at a time," Ngozi counseled. "First we find out exactly what's happening. Then we can decide how to proceed, always keeping their well-being as the priority." As I drove home, I felt a strange mix of emotions, betrayal and anger, certainly, but also a growing determination. Whatever James was hiding, whatever he was planning, I would uncover the truth, and I would protect my children and myself, whatever it took. The next phase of my investigation took me to James's home office again, but this time with a more specific target. I needed access to his computer, not just his tablet. The tablet had revealed the existence of secrets, but his computer might contain the details. James was careful with his main laptop, taking it to work every day, but he kept an older desktop computer in the home office for family use. I had rarely used it, preferring my own laptop, but I knew it was linked to his cloud accounts. If he had been less careful with his older files, I might find something there. I sat down at the desktop, heart pounding, and turned it on. It required a password. I tried our anniversary. Success. I found myself thinking how trusting he was with some things, how secretive with others. It was as if he lived in two worlds simultaneously, with different rules for each. I searched through his documents, finding folders neatly organized by year and project. Nothing suspicious at first glance. Then I noticed a folder, labeled simply Legacy, tucked within multiple subfolders of tax information from 2016, so deeply buried it would be found only by someone specifically looking for it. Inside were hundreds of documents, and what I found left me breathless. There were detailed plans for not just one, but 3 properties in Nigeria. The Lagos beachfront house I had already discovered, plus land in Abuja and a smaller property in James's ancestral village near Enugu. The total investment, just over $600,000, but more shocking than the properties themselves were the emails between James and his mother in Nigeria. They discussed these investments as part of the plan, a plan that apparently involved moving a significant portion of our family's wealth to Nigeria without my knowledge. His mother's emails repeatedly referred to protecting the legacy and securing the future against uncertainty. One email from 3 years ago was particularly disturbing. "My son, you are wise to prepare this way. America is becoming too unstable for people like us. When the time comes, you will have everything in place for the family to return home with dignity and security. Does Amara suspect anything? It is better she does not know until all is ready. Women can be emotional about such matters, and she has become very American in her thinking." James's reply had been brief. "Amara knows nothing. I have been careful. The children's Nigerian passports are updated. Everything will be ready when needed." I sat back, struggling to breathe. James and his mother had been planning some kind of escape, return, secret relocation to Nigeria, and they had deliberately kept me in the dark, with his mother suggesting I was too American and emotional to be trusted with this information. The children's passports. That detail hit me particularly hard. Our children were American-born citizens, but James had insisted they have Nigerian passports as well, to connect them to their heritage. I had supported this. I wanted them connected to Nigeria too. But now I wondered if there had been another motive. I dug deeper, finding spreadsheets tracking the movement of money through multiple accounts, some in our names, others in James's name alone, and still others in his mother's name or corporate entities I didn't recognize. The pattern was clear. Over the past 5 years, James had been systematically moving our family's wealth to Nigeria, converting it to property and secured investments there. But the source of the money was what truly shocked me. Some came from our joint accounts, the 3,000 monthly transfers I had already discovered. Some came from what appeared to be a separate income stream James had never disclosed, consulting fees for Nigerian engineering firms, paid into offshore accounts. And some, most disturbingly, seemed to come from loans taken against our Boston home and retirement accounts, loans I had never approved or even knew existed. The total diverted over 5 years, $825,000. $825,000 of our family's money, hidden and moved without my knowledge or consent. As I tried to process this, I found one more document that made everything even worse. A folder containing scanned copies of documents with my signature. Except I had never signed these documents. There were loan applications, property transfers, power of attorney forms, all bearing a signature that looked like mine, but that I knew I had never made. James had been forging my signature for years. I forwarded everything to my private email, then carefully restored the computer to exactly how I had found it. Then I went to the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left in my stomach. When I could think clearly again, I called Ngozi. Her legal assessment was blunt. This is criminal. Amara. Forgery, fraud, possibly tax evasion, potentially even money laundering depending on how he moved the funds internationally. But why? And I kept asking, why would he risk everything this way? The emails suggest he and his mother believe America is becoming unstable for Nigerians, Ngozi said. That could mean many things. Political concerns, racial tensions, economic worries. But whatever their reasoning, they've been executing this plan for years. And they deliberately excluded you. What do I do now? I asked, feeling lost in a way I never had before. You have options, Ngozi said. Legal action is one path. This is clearly criminal behavior. Or you could confront James, demand explanations and restitution. Or... She hesitated. Or what? You could let him continue, but start protecting yourself and the children. Move money where he can't access it. Secure your own documentation. Prepare for whatever he's planning, but on your terms. I needed time to think, to plan my next move carefully. But time was something I might not have. If James suspected I was investigating him, there was no telling what he might do. That evening, I maintained a facade of normalcy as we went through our family dinner routine. James seemed relaxed, helping the twins with their science project, while I discussed Adana's upcoming school dance. He kissed me as warmly as ever before bed. I lay beside him that night, listening to his familiar breathing, wondering if I had ever truly known this man at all. The next day, I made my first countermove. I visited my bank during lunch and opened a new account in my name only. I transferred $50,000 from our joint savings, a significant sum, but less than what would immediately trigger James's attention. I also requested paper statements for this account to be sent to Ngozi's office, not our home. That same afternoon, I made copies of all our important documents: birth certificates, passports, marriage license, property deeds, insurance policies, and stored them in a safety deposit box that only I could access. I also backed up all the digital evidence I had collected to a secure cloud account and a flash drive I kept with me at all times. And I made one more move. I contacted the forensic accountant Ngozi had recommended, a woman named Sarah Goldstein, who specialized in uncovering hidden assets in divorce cases. I didn't mention divorce when I met with her, simply saying I had concerns about potential financial impropriety involving my husband. She took one look at the documents I provided and whistled softly. "This is sophisticated," she said. "Multiple jurisdictions, corporate entities, property transfers. Your husband has been planning this for years, and he's been careful. Can you trace everything? Find out exactly what assets exist and where?" I asked. "I can try," she said. "But international forensic accounting is challenging, especially with Nigeria involved. Their banking system isn't as transparent as ours, and if he's working with people there who are helping hide assets, it won't be easy or quick. And it won't be cheap. Money isn't the issue," I said, thinking of my new secret account. "Time might be. I don't know what he's planning or when." Sarah promised to prioritize my case and begin work immediately. She also suggested I consult with a family law attorney, not necessarily to file for divorce, but to understand my options and protections under Massachusetts law. That night, as I helped Chidi with his math homework, my phone buzzed with a text from James. "Stuck at work again. Don't wait up." I texted back a casual acknowledgement, then sat staring at the screen, wondering where he really was and what he was really doing. Later, after the children were asleep, I did something I had never done before. I used the Find My Phone feature to locate James's device. According to the app, he was indeed at his office building downtown. But that didn't mean he was working. That building housed dozens of companies, including several law firms and international business consultants. I felt a sudden urge to drive downtown, to see for myself what James was doing. But I stopped myself. Direct confrontation wasn't the right move yet. I needed more information, more leverage, before facing him with what I knew. The next day brought another revelation. Ngozi called with news from her Lagos contacts. The beachfront property exists, Amara. It's in an exclusive development called Echo Atlantic. Very high-end, very expensive. And yes, it's registered in both your names, but the paperwork was handled by a lawyer named Oluwaseun Adeyemi, the same name on the business card I had found in James's passport. Can your contacts tell me more about this lawyer? That's the interesting part, Ngozi said. Adeyemi specializes in helping Nigerian expatriates move assets back to Nigeria, especially those concerned about political instability in their adopted countries. He has a reputation for discretion, and he's known to have connections to government officials who can expedite certain processes. What kinds of processes? Property registrations, banking approvals, and expedited residency permits for returning Nigerians and their families. Residency permits. The pieces were coming together, and the picture they formed was increasingly alarming. James wasn't just moving money. He seemed to be preparing for our entire family to relocate to Nigeria, possibly without my prior knowledge or consent. But why? What had triggered this elaborate, years-long deception? What was he afraid of here in America? And how could he possibly think he could relocate our American-born children to Nigeria without my agreement? The children. A new fear gripped me. If James was planning what I now suspected, the children would be central to his plans. Our next summer visit to Lagos was scheduled in just 2 months. What if that visit was intended to be permanent? What if James had no intention of bringing them back to Boston? I immediately called the family law attorney Sarah had recommended, a woman named Rebecca Chen, who specialized in international custody issues. She listened carefully to my situation, then gave me direct advice. Based on what you've told me, I would recommend immediate protective measures for your children's passports, both American and Nigerian. She explained that I could file for a court order preventing the children from leaving the country without my explicit permission. I could also request that their passports be surrendered to the court or held by a neutral third party. These measures would prevent James from taking them to Nigeria against my wishes. But that would mean going to court, I said. James would know I was on to him. Yes, Rebecca acknowledged. Filing for these protections would force the issue into the open. But if you're correct about his intentions, it might be your best option for protecting your children. I thanked her for the advice, but said I needed time to consider my options. In truth, I was still struggling to accept the reality of what James appeared to be planning. Part of me hoped there was some other explanation, something I was missing that would make sense of his actions without destroying our family. But that hope was fading with each new discovery. And time was running out. Our Lagos trip was scheduled for June 28th, just 8 weeks away. I needed to decide soon what action to take. The next weekend, James announced he had to go into the office to catch up on work for a major project. This had become so common lately that the children barely reacted, but I noticed something different in his demeanor. A tension, an urgency that hadn't been there before. Was it because the Lagos trip was approaching? Was he accelerating whatever plans he had made? After he left, I decided to search his closet. I hadn't done this yet, focusing instead on digital evidence. But sometimes the most revealing clues are physical. At first, I found nothing unusual. Just his normal clothes, shoes, and the spare laptop bag he rarely used. But then I noticed something odd about the closet's back wall. The baseboard didn't quite meet the wall in one corner. When I pressed it, a small section popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a fireproof document box locked with a combination. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. I tried the children's birthdays, our address. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the code from his secure folder app. 0325, the day we met. The lock clicked open. Inside were all our passports. Mine, James's, and the children's, both their American and Nigerian ones. There were also birth certificates, school records, medical histories, and vaccination records. Everything needed for an international relocation. But what made my blood run cold were the plane tickets. One-way tickets from Boston to Lagos, dated June 28th, our planned summer visit. And a handwritten note in James's precise script listing tasks, shipping final items, close Boston accounts, transfer school records, farewell gifts. This wasn't preparation for a possibility anymore. This was an active plan with a specific date. James intended to take us to Nigeria in 8 weeks and never return. The summer visit was meant to be a permanent relocation, and based on the emails with his mother, it seemed he didn't intend to give me a choice in the matter. The plan appeared to be to get us to Nigeria, where his mother and their lawyer would help ensure we stayed, perhaps by controlling access to funds or even our passports. I took photos of everything, then carefully replaced it all exactly as I had found it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely relock the box. Once I had closed the hidden compartment, I sat on our bed, trying to calm my racing thoughts enough to decide what to do next. I now had clear evidence of James's intentions. The question was how to respond. Confrontation seemed inevitable now, but I needed to be strategic about when and how it happened. I called Ngozi, who came over immediately. After examining the photos I'd taken, she said, "This changes everything, Amara. We need to act now, not later. This is about your freedom and your children's futures." We spent the afternoon making calls to Rebecca Chen, the family law attorney, to Sarah Goldstein, the forensic accountant, and to a private investigator Ngozi knew who specialized in financial fraud. By evening, we had assembled a team and developed a plan. First, I would file an emergency motion for temporary custody of the children and surrender of their passports. Rebecca prepared the paperwork that night, ready for filing first thing Monday morning. Second, Sarah would expedite her forensic accounting, focusing on freezing assets in the U.S. before they could be transferred offshore. She had already identified several accounts we could target immediately. Third, the private investigator would document James's activities over the coming week, gathering evidence of any additional financial or travel preparations. And finally, I would prepare the children, not by telling them everything, which would be too traumatic, but by beginning conversations about their preferences and feelings regarding America versus Nigeria. I needed to document their ties to Boston, their school, and friends in case a custody dispute extended across international boundaries. It was a good plan, but James derailed it before we could implement it. That night, after Ngozi left, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when James came home early. He seemed agitated, checking his phone repeatedly and glancing out windows. When the children went upstairs to finish homework, he approached me at the stove. "Amara, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. "In private. Now." I turned off the burner and followed him to his home office, my heart pounding. Had he discovered I was investigating him? Had one of our calls been indiscreet? Had he been monitoring me somehow? He closed the door and faced me, his expression unreadable. "Someone accessed my secure folders on the tablet," he said flatly. "The app logs showed activity when I was at work. Do you know anything about that?" I hadn't considered that the app might track access. A technical oversight that now forced my hand. I could lie, buy more time. But to what end? The confrontation was here whether I was ready or not. "Yes," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. "I saw the photos of the Lagos property, and the bank, statements, and the emails with your mother about the plan." His expression shifted, not to guilt or shame as I might have expected, but to something like relief. "So you know," he said, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "That makes this easier." "Easier?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think discovering that my husband has been lying to me for years, hiding money, forging my signature, and planning to relocate. Our family without my knowledge makes anything easier? James shook his head. You don't understand the situation, Amara. I was protecting our family the only way I could. America is becoming dangerous for immigrants like us, especially Black immigrants. I've been watching the signs for years. We need a safe haven, a place to go when things get worse here. So you decided, without consulting me, to secretly move our money to Nigeria, to forge my signature, to plan a one-way trip without telling me that's what it was? And my voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I tried to talk to you about my concerns, James insisted. Years ago, when it started, you dismissed them. You're too trusting of this country, Amara. You've forgotten what it means to be Nigerian first. So this is my fault? Because I believed in our life here? Because I thought we were building something together in America? James paced the small office, agitated. You wouldn't understand. My position at the firm gives me access to information, projections. I've seen what's coming. Economic collapse, social unrest, targeting of immigrants. We need to be ready. Even if that were true, I said. You should have trusted me with the truth. We could have made plans together, as a family, openly. There wasn't time for debate, he said dismissively. Action was needed. And my mother agreed you wouldn't understand. You've become too Americanized in your thinking. That stung in a way I hadn't expected. So you and your mother decided I wasn't Nigerian enough to be trusted with my own family's future. That I needed to be managed and manipulated rather than consulted. James didn't answer directly. Instead, he shifted gears. It doesn't matter. Now, the plan has changed. We need to accelerate. I've rebooked our flights to Lagos for next week. Next week? I was stunned. The children have school. I have work. We can't just leave. We can, and we will, he said. A new hardness in his voice. I've already notified my firm I'm taking family emergency leave. I've withdrawn the children from school, citing a family crisis in Nigeria. All that's left is to pack what we can take and put the house on the market. You did what? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Without discussing it with me, without even telling me. There's no time, Amara. For the first time, he raised his voice. Things are moving faster than I anticipated. We need to secure our position in Nigeria now before it's too late. What things? What are you talking about? I demanded. Thank you for reading my story. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like and subscribe to support more stories like this one. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever discovered something unexpected that changed your relationship? I'd love to hear from you.